And welcome to my new channel. I am very happy to be here, and I have been wanting to do this story for a while, but it didn't feel right to talk about yet with all of the rumors surrounding it. But then I realized this could go on for a very long time with all of the rumor mill until there is court. So I decided, what the heck, and I'm here now. I do need to start out by saying that I am not a professional, and all of the information in this video has been found off the internet or from news stations. I highly recommend doing your own research. I also need to strongly push the point that everything that I say about Bryan Kohberger is alleged, and he is innocent until proven guilty in the court. At the same time, everything that I say about Dennis Rader has been proven in court, and he is a convicted killer. So why do I ask the question, did Kohberger copy the BTK killer? And what happened in both of these separate stories? At this point, I am pretty sure that 99% of the population knows both of these stories. But just in case I'm wrong, here is a quick recap of both stories. And in the end, I will tie my theory together. So let's get right into it. Dennis Lynn Rader, also known as the BTK killer, was born on March 9th, 1945, and he has been convicted on ending the lives of 10 people over the span of 30 years. Throughout his spree, he enjoyed taunting the police, and that is actually what got him caught in 2005. When he was arrested, his family urged him to plead guilty. This resulted in him telling all of his dark obsessions and his dirty secrets. He revealed that after serving in the Air Force, he began studying criminal justice at Wichita State University when he committed his first murders on January 15, 1974. His heinous crime resulted in him strangling 4 family members, including 2 children. There was male fluids found in the home, but none of his victims had any evidence that he had touched them in that kind of a way. He had gotten the thrill and, in his own words, began stalking more victims, and a few months later in April, he went after a 21-year-old girl, and her brother actually interrupted him in the middle of it. Rader shot him, but he managed to escape. And then Rader killed the woman with a knife. It was after this that he wrote his first letter, and in it he stated, "Bind them, torture them, and kill them." At the bottom, he signed it BTK for the first time, and he left that note in a book at a local library. What is so chilling about him is after he had begun his reign of terror, he got married and had 2 children and was very involved in his community. He worked for a home security company, became a compliance officer for a city, all the while being very active in his church, and even was a Boy Scout leader. Over the next decade, he killed several more victims, even taking one of his victims to his church, having his fun with her in the way that he enjoyed, and then disposing of her. After his last victim in 1991, his cases went cold until the 30th anniversary of his first victim in 2004, when a newspaper featured an article on him speculating that he had either died or had been arrested for other crimes. This totally kicked this monster into gear, and he wanted recognition and began leaving clues and evidence all over, taunting the police. What got him caught was when Rader sent in a note to the police asking them if they could track a floppy disk. The police obviously lied and said no. Rader then sent the disc, and the police were able to track it back to his church that he worked at and were able to match his DNA. Then they promptly arrested him. After his trial and when he began his sentence, a renowned forensic psychologist named Catherine Ramsland began sitting down with him and spending hours interviewing him. Dr. Ramsland has written dozens of books, and 3 of which are about her discussions with Dennis Rader. So what does she have to do with Bryan Kohberger? Bryan was a PhD student getting his degree in criminal justice and criminology at the Washington State University. One of his favorite teachers was Dr. Ramsland. Many sources have come out and said that he was absolutely obsessed with Dennis Rader, and he specifically chose the school so he could study from her. So who is Bryan Kohberger and why is he important? Bryan is being charged for the murders of Kaylee Gonzalez, Madison Mogen, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin. These incredible, driven, beautiful, smart, and wonderful young adults were slain in the early morning hours of Sunday, November 13th in their rented home close to the campus of the University of Idaho. All four were college students. Xana and Ethan were 20, and Maddie and Kaylee were 21. They all lived at 1122 King Road. The house had another two roommates living in it that were unharmed, and it was known to be a party house. I mean, I remember college days, and what house wasn't a party house? I still had a pretty good idea of who was coming in and out, but I digress. Ethan and Xana had been at a party right across the road, and they had been dating for a little while. Maddie and Kaylee had been hanging out at the corner club, and they all made it back to the home around 2 a.m. There has been several documentaries, theories, and rumors about what actually happened, and that is because there is a massive gag order in place. This gag order, it covers the lawyers, the family, everybody involved in the case, and it is allowing so much speculation to not get corrected. The following information is what we know to be true and comes directly from the affidavit. On November 14th at 11:58 a.m., a 911 call was placed, and there is a lot of discussion that there were several people there at the scene even before the police were there. When authorities did get there, they found the four victims slain with what they believed to be a K-bar knife because of the wounds, and there was also a knife sheath that was left at the scene beside of Maddie's body. Kaylee and Maddie were found upstairs in the same bed. They were best friends, had been best friends since middle school, and it's just sad to think about them in their last moments, but at least they were together. Xana and Ethan were found on the second floor, and sources say that Xana put up an extremely strong fight. Another thing that is known is there was a property very close that had a ring camera that could hear yelling and then a thud around the same time. So it is believed that Xana was awake, and her TikTok also showed that it was active around this time, and she had also ordered DoorDash. As police began investigating behind the scenes, a lot of people thought that not enough was being done, but then they came out and asked for tips about a white Hyundai Elantra. Through these tips and other evidence, it led the police back to Bryan Kohberger as the main suspect. While the police were watching him, Bryan's dad flew out to Washington and rode all the way back to the family home in Pennsylvania with Bryan in that white Elantra. And on the way, they get pulled over 2 times by police, and you can look up the footage and see them talking. Bryan looks very nervous. Bryan was with his family through the holidays, and the police watched him until they brought in a SWAT team and arrested him in the middle of the night while he was separating his garbage with gloves on his hands in the kitchen in the dark. Most recently, Bryan was indicted by the grand jury and chose to stand silent when he was asked to enter a plea. Okay, we are all caught up with both cases. Awesome. Now, let's get into the similarities and see how it appears that the alleged killer, Bryan Kohberger, could be trying to copy Dennis Rader. We already know from Rader himself that he would wait for his victims and stalk them, even sometimes going by the scene again after the fact to sickly relive it. Bryan's phone pinged 12 times by the Idaho residents and one more time around 9 a.m. the morning after, even before the 911 call came in. The next thing, and probably the one that makes me raise my eyebrows the most, if Bryan did do what he is being accused of, and these were his first slayings, it is so rare for someone to immediately choose to end so many lives. There is normally an escalation period, but Dennis Rader's first time was 4 victims, and if Bryan is convicted and this is his first, he too would have started out with 4 victims. Another point is both scenes could be argued that there is a sexual motive, but at both scenes, there is no evidence that the victims have been touched in that way. The next thing would be the backgrounds and the degrees that both men have studied in. Criminology. Also, Bryan had worked as a security guard and Rader had worked as a compliance officer. Both of these jobs gave them the authority over others, and both men took so much pleasure in that. Even Rader's daughter, Carrie Rawson, came out in interviews after hearing about the arrest of Kohberger and said that it bothered her immediately. She could see her father in his actions. Next similarity is that Rader was 28 at the time of his first murders, and Bryan Kohberger was 28 when this happened. And last but not least, when both men were asked how they pled, both men stood silent and the judge had to enter the pleas for them. So what do you think about this? Do you believe that if he is guilty, he was using Rader as some sort of weird mentor? Do you think that it is completely unrelated? Do you think that there is more that I am missing? Please let me know in the comment section down below. Thank you for watching, and remember that if at first you do not succeed, it is still attempted murder, so just don't. And with that, I will see you in the next video where we find out who killed who.